All right, so today we are jumping into a really interesting paper called Idea2Story, an automated pipeline for transforming research concepts into complete scientific narratives. It's from the Agent Alpha team, folks like Tenjuye Zhu and Zuoyan Qin.
This one's been making some waves.
It has. So, for everyone just joining, here is the 1-minute summary. Current autonomous research agents, things like the AI scientist or open hands, they're kind of hitting a wall.
The big one.
They use what's called a runtime-centric model. This means for every single new idea, they have to go out, grab, read, and process thousands of raw PDFs from scratch. It just burns through tokens, it smashes into context window limits, and it leads to a lot of hallucinations.
Yeah, it's not scalable.
So Idea2Story completely flips the script. It moves all that heavy lifting to what they call offline knowledge construction. It pre-builds this massive knowledge graph from about 13,000 accepted papers.
And this is the crucial part, their peer reviews.
Exactly. It then breaks these papers down into reusable blocks of logic called method units and learns how to combine them into high-quality research patterns.
And the result is that it generates ideas that are just way more novel and structurally sound than what you get from just prompting a normal LLM. It's effectively changing the game from just reading text to querying logic.
That's the headline. So let's unpack this. Welcome to AI Paper Podcasts. This paper, to me, feels like a direct response to a frustration a lot of us in the field have been feeling about agentic workflows.
It really is. I mean, we've all seen the flashy demos of these fully autonomous scientists. You give it a prompt, something like optimize this loss function, and supposedly it does the whole thing.
The literature review, the coding, running the experiment.
The whole 9 yards. But what the Idea2Story authors argue is that the entire architecture behind those agents is, well, it's fundamentally inefficient. They actually call it the efficiency crisis.
Let's drill down on that, because on the surface, LLMs are getting better, context windows are getting huge. We're hearing about 1 million, 2 million tokens. Why can't the agent just read the whole library?
It's a great question. It's not just about fitting the text in the window. It's about what happens to the model's reasoning when you actually do that. The paper points to this context window trap.
Okay.
Even if you manage to stuff 100 papers into the context, the model starts to suffer from that lost in the middle problem. It just forgets earlier details, or the signal-to-noise ratio gets so bad that it starts, hallucinating connections between things that aren't actually related.
And then there's the cost factor. They mentioned it can take up to 15 hours just to get from ideation to the start of an experiment.
15 hours. And that's just the setup. Think about the sheer redundancy. This is the part of the paper that really clicked for me.
Go on.
Imagine you're one of these runtime agents. You get a new NLP task. You go pull 50 papers. A huge chunk of them, probably most of them, are going to cite, attention is all you need.
The transformer paper, of course.
Exactly. But if you're a runtime agent starting from zero every time, you have to read and process the concept of a transformer as if it's brand new information. Every single time.
You're recomputing the understanding of these fundamental building blocks over and over again.
Whereas a human researcher just doesn't do that. You don't reread the definition of backpropagation every morning before you start coding. You have it stored as a core concept.
It's already in your own mental knowledge graph.
Precisely. It's just computationally wasteful and logically fragile to do it at runtime. So Idea2Story proposes this offline knowledge construction. They want to build that long-term memory for the agent.
Okay, let's talk about how they build this brain then. Step 1 is the data, the ingestion process.
And they were very specific about this, which I appreciated. They didn't just scrape a random pile of papers off Archive. They targeted NeurIPS and ICLR from the last 3 years. We're talking about 13,000 papers.
So only high-impact venues.
The best of the best. But the real genius here isn't just the papers themselves. It's that they also scraped all the open review data associated with them.
You mean the peer reviews, the author rebuttals, the confidence scores from reviewers, all of it?
All of it. And this is so critical. If you just train a model on raw paper text, a paper might be beautifully written but methodologically flawed. Or it could be a negative result. The model just takes the text as gospel.
But the peer reviews, that provides a ground truth signal for the quality of the idea.
Exactly. It's a filter. If a reviewer gives a paper a 3 out of 10 and says, the ablation study was weak, Idea2Story captures that signal. It learns not just what a method is, but how valid the scientific community thinks it is.
So it's like adding a reliability weight to the different ideas in the graph.
You've got it.
Yeah.
And they were also careful to apply strict anonymization. They stripped all the author names and affiliations.
Oh, interesting. Why?
So the system evaluates ideas purely on their technical merit, not on whether the paper came from a famous lab at Stanford or Google.
I like that. So, okay, they have the raw materials. Now they need to refine them. The paper calls this method unit extraction. This seems like the absolute core of the whole system.
It is. This is where they transform plain text into structured logic. They basically decompose every single paper into what they call method units.
What exactly goes into a method unit? Because papers are messy. You've got code, math, long-winded introductions.
Right. So they strip out all the engineering noise. They remove specific hyperparameters, random seeds, which GPUs they use, and that's the whole point of the paper.
Okay.
And they distill it down to three core components: the base problem, the solution pattern, and the story.
Can you walk us through an example? The paper had one, right?
Yeah, they used a great case study on learning dynamics of LLM fine-tuning. A normal RAG system might just pull out the specific data set they used. But Idea2Story extracts the abstract logic.
So what would that look like?
So the base problem becomes understanding how training examples influence predictions. The solution pattern is stepwise influence accumulation.
Yeah.
And the story, the narrative, is reframing fine-tuning through learning dynamics to explain hallucination.
I see. So it's capturing the actual intellectual move the researcher made. I'm solving X with mechanism Y to tell narrative Z.
Exactly. It decouples the core logic from the specific implementation details. And once you have thousands of these little Lego blocks, these units, you can start building the knowledge graph.
Let's get into that graph architecture. This isn't just a big list of units, right? It's a network.
It is, yeah. The nodes in the graph are these method units, but they also do some clever clustering with UMP and dbScan. This lets them group similar units into what they call meta methods.
So it can recognize that, say, a certain method in computer vision is mathematically kind of similar to a method being used in NLP?
You got it.
Yeah.
But the real magic is in the edges connecting the nodes. The edges represent composition relations.
Compatibility.
Yes. If Paper X successfully combined a diffusion model with a unit architecture, the graph draws a really strong edge between those two nodes. It learns which methods actually play well together based on empirical evidence from published peer-reviewed work.
And that must be what helps with the hallucination problem, right? A standard LLM might just fuse two concepts that sound cool together but are mathematically incompatible.
Absolutely. This graph only allows, or at least heavily prioritizes, connections that have a precedent of working. It provides a kind of structural grounding for any creativity.
So the offline brain is built. Let's move to the online phase. This is where a user actually comes in with an idea.
And they designed it for how people actually work.
Yeah.
Users usually have these fuzzy, vague intents. The example prompt they use in the paper is perfect. I want to build a better e-commerce agent.
Which is incredibly vague. If I type that into ChatGPT right now, I'm going to get a generic Wikipedia-style summary. User recommendation engine, maybe some collaborative filtering.
Exactly. The average of the internet. Idea2Story, on the other hand, does what it calls multi-view retrieval. It's not just doing a keyword match. It looks at three different levels.
What are they?
First, the idea level, so it's matching the semantic abstract of your idea. Second, the domain level, filtering for, e-commerce. And third, the paper level, where it looks for specific implementations, but weighted by those review scores we talked about earlier.
So it's triangulating the best part of the graph, the best subgraph, to answer the query.
It pulls a whole cluster of compatible method units and assembles them into a research pattern. But, and this is the part I love, it doesn't just hand it to you. It enters a review-guided refinement loop.
Wait, it reviews its own work?
It uses an LLM as a reviewer agent. It literally critiques the plan it just generated for novelty, for technical soundness, and for clarity.
It's playing the role of reviewer #2.
Hopefully a slightly nicer version. But yes, if the plan looks derivative or logically weak, the system goes back to the graph. It might swap out a method unit. Maybe it keeps the base problem, but tries a different solution pattern with a higher compatibility score. And it just keeps iterating. It iterates until the predicted review score actually improves.
That's fascinating. It's actually mimicking the real scientific process. We don't just publish our first draft. We iterate, we get feedback, we refine.
It basically turns ideation into an optimization problem, a search problem within the knowledge graph.
So let's talk results. They did a qualitative study, a battle of the prompts, comparing Idea2Story against a pretty strong baseline, GLM 4.7.
And this comparison really drives home the difference between text generation and idea generation. They use that same vague prompt, I want to build an e-commerce agent that understands user intent.
Okay, so what did the standard LLM come up with?
It proposed a project called Eco-Intent. The solution was pretty standard, a BERT encoder combined with a graph neural network. It framed the whole thing as a basic classification task.
I mean, that's valid. It would probably work.
Oh, it's totally valid. It's technically correct, but
Yeah.
it is so boring. It's safe science. It's an incremental improvement using the most standard tools available. It's what you get when you just predict the most likely next token.
Right, the most average, predictable idea. So what did Idea2Story come up with?
It generated a proposal called intent diff.
Diff as in diffusion.
Exactly. That reframed the entire problem. Instead of treating user intent as some static label you classify, it treated intent as a dynamic structural evolution that needs to be denoised over time.
So it proposed a diffusion-based framework to denoise a user's intent from their search history.
Yes. Applying diffusion models, which you usually see in image generation, to e-commerce search intent.
Wow. That is actually a really cool, novel idea.
It's highly novel. But here's the key. It wasn't random. A normal LLM probably wouldn't make that connection because the words diffusion and e-commerce just don't appear together that often in the training text.
So how did Idea2Story find that connection?
The graph. When they analyzed the graph's topology, they found this classic hub-and-spoke structure. You have these massive domains like computer vision and NLP as hubs. But then you have these pattern nodes that act as bridges between them.
And diffusion is one of those bridge nodes.
Precisely. The graph understood that diffusion is a powerful solution pattern for any general denoising problem. It also saw that user intent can be framed as a denoising problem. So it just walked across the bridge and applied a method from one domain to a problem in a completely different one.
That's basically the definition of interdisciplinary creativity.
And because it's all built on these method units, the system actually knows how to implement it. It isn't just smashing buzzwords together. It has the core solution pattern from the original diffusion paper stored right there in the graph.
This really touches on that idea paradox you mentioned earlier.
Right, from that See It All paper. The idea paradox is this observation that ideas from LLMs often look really novel on the surface. They use fancy words, they seem ambitious, but they completely collapse when you try to actually implement them. They have no structural grounding.
They're logical hallucinations.
And Idea2Story mitigates that because every idea it constructs is built from these pre-validated blocks. It's like building a new castle, but you're using bricks that have all passed a safety inspection.
I want to zoom out for a second. This paper is really focused on the idea phase of research, but they do mention future work involving execution.
That's the clear next step, right? Right now, Idea2Story is the brain. It generates the research plan. The next step is to connect it to the hands.
To agents like OpenHands or those AI scientist coding modules.
Exactly. Imagine a world where Idea2Story generates that intent diff proposal and then immediately passes the structured method units to a coding agent to actually build it.
And because the units are already stripped of noise and contain the core logic, they'd be perfect prompts for a code gen model.
You could have a fully closed loop, generate a hypothesis, write the code, run the experiment, and then feed the results back into the knowledge graph to make it smarter.
We're moving from just automated literature review to automated hypothesis generation and verification.
And the key, the real enabler, is that shift from runtime reading to offline knowledge construction. It tells us we can't just keep throwing more compute at bigger context windows and hope for the best.
No, we need structure. We need an index of logic, not just a buffer of text.
Kind of makes you think about our own learning processes as researchers, right? We don't just memorize papers word for word. We abstract them. We say, oh, that's just a UNet adaptation, or that's basically lower I. We build our own mental method units.
And we do that processing offline. When we're reading, thinking, talking with colleagues, we don't rederive the math for a transformer every time we write a line of code.
Idea2Story is basically just trying to formalize that human mental model into a graph.
It's like it's trying to automate the intuition of a senior researcher.
That's a bold way to put it, but
Yeah.
It's automating that associative memory that connects what seem to be completely disparate fields.
Before we wrap up, what are the limitations here? The paper is very positive, but what are the bottlenecks?
Well, the big one is that the graph is static. That's the trade-off with offline construction. If a groundbreaking paper comes out on RxEv today, Idea2Story doesn't know about it until you rerun the whole ingestion pipeline.
Whereas a runtime agent could just Google it.
Exactly. So there's a latency issue.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, the quality of the entire graph is completely dependent on the quality of that first extraction step. If the method unit extractor messes up and fails to identify the core logic correctly, you get garbage nodes.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Right. But, given their results, especially that novelty comparison against a top-tier LLM, it seems like the trade-off is absolutely worth it for these deep research tasks.
It definitely feels like a big step away from the stochastic parrot idea and more towards a structured reasoner.
It's structure over scale. Or maybe it's structure enabling scale.
This has been a really fascinating look at Idea2's story. I think for everyone listening, the big takeaway is this. We need to stop thinking of AI research agents as just really fast speed readers. It's time to start thinking of them as architects using a library of prefabricated, validated logic blocks.
And maybe pay a little more attention to the peer reviews you write. You never know when your comment might end up as a weight in a future knowledge graph.
That is a slightly terrifying thought. We're going to leave it there. This has been AI Paper Podcasts. Thanks for tuning into this deep dive on Idea2Story. We'll catch you on the next paper.